Imagine this. You wake up, check the news, and there's this huge alert. A major global figure says, complete and total ceasefire between two warring nations. Big relief, right? But then almost like instantly the other side comes out and says, hold on, not so fast. There's no agreement. Kokusha. It's jarring. Makes you stop and think, okay, what really just happened? Today, we're diving deep into exactly that kind of scenario. We're going to sift through all these conflicting reports, the diplomatic moves, the pretty stunning military displays around the recent Israel-Iran tensions. Our mission really is to try and cut through that fog of war and give you a clear picture, a comprehensive look at something that's, well, way more complex than just a headline.
So if you're looking to really get your head around the nuances of this critical geopolitical moment, but maybe without getting totally swamped by information overload, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. So the whole thing really kicked off, what was it, Tuesday, June 24th, Donald Trump posts on True Social. And he proclaims this complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Says both nations had fully agreed. Ceasefire starting in 6 hours. Total stop to hostilities in 24 hours. He even called it the 12-day war.
Yeah, the 12-day war. That phrasing is interesting in itself, isn't it? Deliberately trying to, carve out a moment, set it apart from the 67 six-day war.
Exactly. And he didn't just announce it. He claimed he brokered it. Said both countries came to him almost simultaneously, apparently, looking for peace. And he predicted tremendous love, peace, and prosperity. Big words.
Very big words. And what's just fascinating, really striking, is how fast the contradiction came from Iran, almost immediately. Iran's foreign minister, Arachi, he just met with Putin, by the way, posts on X, and he says, point blank, no agreement whatsoever for a ceasefire, zero ambiguity there. He did clarify Iran's position. They'd stop their retaliation if Israel stopped its, quote, illegal aggression by 4 a.m. Tehran time. That was 7 a.m. here in Thailand.
Okay, so a conditional stop, not a pre-agreed ceasefire.
Precisely. Now, his later posts got a bit maybe more nuanced. They seem to imply Israel had stopped by the deadline and Iran's forces had, done their job. But that initial very public message was crystal clear. No agreement. A huge disconnect from Trump's announcement.
Right. So you have Trump saying fully agreed and Iran saying no agreement whatsoever. So was Trump just like putting it out there hoping it would stick, or was there something else going on? A strategy behind announcing something that wasn't apparently agreed upon?
That really is the core question, isn't it? And to get a handle on that, we probably need to look at what was happening right before the announcement. The lead-up was pretty intense. Just hours before Trump's post, Iran attacked the U.S. base in Qatar, Al Udeid.
That's the big one, right? America's largest in the Middle East.
Exactly. Around 10,000 troops stationed there. Iran described this attack as revenge. Revenge for earlier U.S. strikes on what they said were 3 Iranian nuclear sites, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. But here's an interesting detail. Trump himself actually acknowledged that Iran gave advance warning about the Qatar attack. So no casualties resulted. He even characterized it as a soft response from Iran, which is quite a statement.
A soft response involving an attack on a major U.S. base.
Okay.
But the U.S. wasn't exactly sitting back either, were they? There was that display of military power.
Oh, absolutely not. This is where it gets technologically significant. The U.S. deployed B-2 stealth bombers for the first time in this context. And these weren't just any B-2s. They were carrying 30,000-pound MOPs, massive ordnance penetrators, bunker busters.
30,000 pounds, designed to go deep underground.
Deep underground. And the B-2, it's an incredible piece of engineering. Flies 36, maybe 48 hours without landing, refuels midair, flies straight from the U.S. mainland to Iran, totally off radar. This wasn't just muscle flexing. It felt like a very calculated signal being sent. And you have to assume that factored into whatever discussions were happening about a ceasefire, however messy they were.
Yeah, it changes the calculus, doesn't it?
It really does. And you connect that to Trump boasting the U.S. is now, 10 plus years ahead of everyone else in military tech. This kind of dramatic display, it almost echoes, historically the impact of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that spurred a nuclear arms race. Could this demonstration ignite a new conventional arms race? You think about China, Russia, India, Japan. They're watching this. Makes them wary, makes them think.
That's a really sobering thought, this idea of sparking a conventional arms race. Could it also maybe push smaller states towards nuclear options because they feel they just can't compete conventionally against something like that? The risk of miscalculation seems huge.
It's a definite risk. Unintended consequences are always part of the equation in these situations. And the confusion, as you said, it didn't stop there. You had Fars News in Iran. They're known to be close to the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Right.
They came out and flatly said Trump's announcement was completely false. Not just no agreement, but false. And they even threatened more retaliation. So does that point to maybe internal disagreements within Iran? Or is it just a very complex messaging strategy, sending different signals to different people? Hard to say.
It really is hard to penetrate that fog. And then adding another layer of confusion. Senior U.S. officials were apparently telling CBS News that, yes, an agreement had been reached. They reported Trump spoke directly to Netanyahu, and his team Ryabkov was mentioned engaged with Iran.
So U.S. officials saying yes, Iran saying no.
Exactly. And then you have U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance claiming U.S. attacks had actually destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities, which is a massive claim in itself.
A huge claim, especially when, at the same time, you have reports suggesting fighting was still going on right up to the, quote, last minute. There were even images on social media, apparently, showing missile impacts in Beersheba, down in southern Israel, after Trump's ceasefire announcement.
It's just a whirlwind of contradictions. Peace announced, peace denied, fighting ongoing, nuclear capabilities supposedly destroyed. You'd think global markets would just panic, right? Total chaos. But that wasn't quite the reaction, was it? What did happen with the economy amidst all this noise?
It's actually one of the most telling parts of this whole episode. Surprisingly, maybe counterintuitively, oil prices dropped sharply. Plummeted, really. Fell below where they were before this recent conflict kicked off. And Asian stock markets, they surged. It seems like investors, the market, just decided to believe the good news signal from Trump, despite all the contradictory information flying around.
Wow. So the perception of a ceasefire, even a contested one, was enough to move markets significantly.
It really highlights something about information in conflict zones today, doesn't it? How quickly markets react, or maybe overreact, to signals, even before the facts are clear. It shows a kind of bias towards optimism, or perhaps just a vulnerability to whoever controls the narrative first.
That narrative control seems key. Which brings us back to Trump's style. This whole situation feels, to many observers, very characteristic of his approach, sometimes called the salesman approach to diplomacy.
Yes, that's a common description. The idea of delivering the headline first and then, letting the details, the actual content, get sorted out later. He's certainly known for bold pronouncements, sometimes bluffing, sometimes getting out ahead of a fully baked agreement, and perhaps having subordinates who are eager to make his announcements reality after the fact. His focus seemed very much on framing it instantly, declaring, "I knew the time was now. The world and the Middle East are the real winners." It's about setting the terms of discussion immediately.
So it's a strategy that prioritizes optics, maybe forces reactions, even if the foundation isn't quite solid yet?
It can do that, yes. It creates momentum, or at least the appearance of it, which can sometimes become self-fulfilling. Or it can completely backfire. Here, it seemed to do a bit of both, creating massive confusion, but also somehow a market rally.
So where does this leave things now? If this ceasefire or pause or whatever we call it actually holds, it feels more like a comma than a full stop.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't the end of the story. It's likely just the start of a new chapter. Both sides took hits. They've been, as some reports said, seriously wounded. And they've also exposed some of their capabilities, perhaps unwillingly. Iran, particularly, seems to have suffered significant losses. Key figures in military, political, intelligence circles, even Qatar, remember, who was trying to mediate, ended up being targeted by Iran. That complicates future diplomacy, too. So now you have the immense task of negotiating actual conditions, figuring out who really gained or lost, assessing the damage, and somehow determining how Israel and Iran coexist after this. It's incredibly complex.
Yeah, definitely not a clean resolution. This deep dive, it's really shown us a situation just layered with contradiction. Every statement feels like a strategic play. That fog of war seems denser than ever.
It really does. We've seen the immediate events, sure, but also this startling display of new military tech and these weirdly rapid market reactions that didn't seem fully aligned with the facts on the ground. It does make you think the world might genuinely, not be the same after this conflict and the way it all played out.
So as you're processing all this, maybe think about this. How could this 12-day war, this very visible demonstration of advanced U.S. weaponry, actually reshape the global arms race going forward? And maybe on a deeper level, what does this whole episode tell us about truth, about information itself? Especially in a world where headlines seem to travel faster than fast can even catch up,